It's okay, babe. Nika here. Oh, I just don't want you to fall and hurt yourself. Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday, and we have so much information to cover here. Yeah, we're still talking about the Kohberger case. I promise I will eventually get to Noah Presgrove because you guys asked me to talk about that mess, right? And I'm sure that you guys saw the title. Kohberger, unanswered questions. Goncalves hoarding money, refunds, and Taylor stands by BK? Yeah, you might want to grab a drink. I have a little Mexican Coke here. Hello, guys. Hello, I see you guys in the chat. Pop off in the chat. Say hi. That being said, I have really bad ADD. It's almost like, what's the point of having a high IQ, bro, if you're gonna have ADD? Like a hyper focus on like 20 different things at once. So it's interesting having a YouTube channel, right? Now, before we get started, grab a drink. Welcome, family. Welcome, welcome. We have a lot to talk about, and I am pulling up the Goncalves family page on their Facebook. I think I was blocked, but I went ahead and I'm using another account so I can see their comments. Now, I got so much hate when I first mentioned this, right? Because I was like, sir, ma'am, GFam, excuse me. You guys raised over $150,000 and that money was supposed to be for trial. And people are like, why are you such a hater? Like, just let them keep the money. I'm like, look, I'm just asking questions. I want to know what is happening with this money. And finally, we get a response at their Facebook page. And this is what they wrote, right? Friends, we are home. Thank you for all your support, love, and prayers. This page is a place of comfort for me, my safe place. You have all been with me for years now and have always stood right next to me. I will forever be grateful. I'm sorry if you don't agree with our recent choice on the plea deal. BK literally is too afraid to die, but he wasn't afraid to unalive. BK wanted a plea deal and he was given one. Kaylee was not offered a plea deal. The state is showing BK mercy by removing the death penalty. BK did not show Kaylee any mercy. People tell us we should be happy with life in prison without parole, as he will never get out. Well, the death penalty also means life on death row. We know it would be decades before he would even face the firing squad. We knew that his execution was not going to happen anytime soon, but his life on death row while serving his time would have been much worse than serving his time as life in prison. I don't know, man. Life in prison, if you're accused of unaliving 4 young people, it's not like it's all shits and giggles, right? He doesn't deserve life in prison. He deserves life on death row. Also, people say that the Goncalves don't want justice. They want vengeance. But they literally want vengeance, right? Like, isn't that vengeance? Well, let me ask you a question about that. If your 21-year-old daughter was sleeping in her bed and BK went into her house with the intention to unalive her, and he did by stabbing her many times, as well as beating her face and head while it was clear that she fought for her life, what would you want? Justice or vengeance? Yikes, that's a tough spot. Maybe a little bit of both. I'm curious how you would feel. It gets so old having people say we want vengeance and make it sound like we're animals for having those feelings. No one's saying you're an animal for having those feelings, but it's clear as day to me that the GFam has always wanted vengeance, right? I don't care if they want vengeance or whatever, but I do care about them wanting vengeance when there is minimal evidence pointing to Kohberger being the criminal. And I'm going to get to that because there's so many unanswered questions. Again, if you're a guilter, like, you don't have to let me know you're in here, because once a person has made up their mind, there is no use of trying to brainwash them back or show them evidence or whatever to try to convince them. Because once a person has made up their minds, at this point, you can probably show guilt or footage of somebody else committing the crime, and they'd be like, I'm still gonna go with Kohberger, right? Because we know that that's how the brain works for a lot of people. So let's talk about the money. Oh, he put the money at the bottom. Many people are talking about our GoFundMe and returning everyone's money. Yeah, they are. You know why? Because you asked to raise what? They raised over $150,000. You said it was for the trial, which I, from the get-go, thought it was excessive. A lot of people thought it was excessive. He says, I understand this is a priority for many people. Well, yeah, bro. Again, this family, Mr. Goncalves allegedly had written on his very own LinkedIn that he was a self-made millionaire. So why are you asking for money? This economy is tough, right? By the way, thank you for all of you who have donated to my Cash App, to here. I appreciate it. But let's be realistic. Most of us are out here struggling. Everything is expensive. And here it sounds like the Goncalves family is complaining. Like, why is this a priority for so many people? Hello? Have you seen the price of food? Have you seen the price of fuel, right? Please give me time to figure out how to best do this. I just can't ask GoFundMe to reimburse everyone. Actually, yes, you can. That's exactly how GoFundMe reimburses people. You literally contact them and you say, yeah, give everybody back their money, and they do that immediately. So why is he bullshitting us yet again? This is why it's so hard for me to have empathy, and I do have empathy, right? For any family member who was involved in this chaos, this mess, this horrific mess. But this doesn't sit well with me. He's saying he can't ask GoFundMe to reimburse people. Bro, that's literally what you have to do. He says, as the money has already been deposited into my bank account, okay? But you can very quickly make a very quick transaction from your bank account to the GoFundMe, and then GoFundMe is very quick about sending money back to people, right? Now, I'm just personally wondering, this video, every single video, my theories, my speculations, my conspiracies, I'm just wondering, I want to know, how much money has the G-Fam already blown? How much money has the G-Fam already spent? He's saying, the money's already been deposited into my bank account. Does that mean you already blew it? Because a lot of people have speculated that they've been getting shit done. I saw somebody saying that, Kaylee's mom had done all these beauty treatments, like Botox and surgeries, and I don't know, because to me, like, I don't pay attention to her at her physical appearance, I guess. Some people have speculated that Steve G had hair plugs put in. Again, these are speculations, but that's a nice chunk of change sitting in the bank that people gave him. And now people are asking for their money, which is interesting to me because, again, people gave me a hard time for saying, how could you be so rude? How could you have so little empathy? I'm not involved. I never donated money. I don't care if people choose to give him their money, but I knew this would happen because at some point it gets to be a little bit too much, even for the guilters. Even the guilters are like, did we just get taken advantage of? Because I think we did, right? And I'm assuming that whoever is writing this is Kaylee's mom, right? It says, Steve and I need a few days alone to process what has just happened. Are you referring to the plea deal? Because you wanted vengeance, right? It is so hard to describe what we're going through right now. It is very mentally and emotionally exhausting. My whole body aches from my fingertips to my toes. Please give us some grace. I promise we won't skip town. And this was posted, what, like 4 days ago or something? Where are they? Where is the money? Have they even transferred it from their bank account to GoFundMe yet? This video is not about this, but I just wanted to put that out there because, again, I knew this was going to happen, and you guys said I was a jerk. Again, I don't care. If you want to give them all your money, go ahead. But again, this is a tight economy. Things are expensive. We are struggling. A lot of us are having to work a job or 2 jobs just to survive. Of course, people are going to be asking for their money back when they gave from the heart, trying to be helpful, having empathy, having sympathy. But not everybody's stupid. Not everybody's going to allow them to just take advantage, right? So let's talk about some questions I have regarding this case. And the first thing that comes to mind is Dylan Mortensen. What did she say in that 911 call? Can I pretty much just tell you what happened? That's what she said on the 911 call. And then she was cut off, right? She was cut off by the people in the home, by the officer. They didn't tell her to keep going. They cut her off and were asking questions. But Dylan said, can I pretty much just tell you what happened? I would love for Dylan to come forward and pretty much tell us what happened, Dylan, because we have so many unanswered questions. This video is for everybody, by the way. It doesn't mean it's not for you because we disagree. It doesn't mean it's not for you. But even if you think Brian did it, it's okay, babe. We still like you. We still like you, right? As a human being. We may not be a fan of how you process information, but still. I also have a question for Hunter C. And we're just going over some things, a lot of things that maybe we missed, right? Because Hunter C., we hear him in an interview talking about the other Hunter, right? And he's saying that Hunter J went over to wake him up and told him that Xana and Ethan were gone. And I've talked about how shoddy of an investigation this has all been, right? So if Hunter J went over to wake the other Hunter up, that means that Hunter J, the one on the 911 call, was for some freaking reason allowed to leave the crime scene. Never have I ever heard of cops allowing people to leave the crime scene. Why did they just let him walk away to let the others know, right? And Hunter had a phone. He could have just called people. Why are they letting people leave the crime scene, right? I also have some questions for Olivia Goncalves, right? Because she had mentioned back in the day that she had obtained camera footage of Kaylee and Maddie arriving home. So wouldn't that then mean that Olivia and the family had other footage? Right? How did she just magically retrieve this footage, right? I want to know, when did Olivia retrieve this footage? Why and when was she allowed to enter and exit? Again, shoddy investigation. Why are cops allowing people to enter, exit, and take back footage, right? They shouldn't be allowing people to do that. It doesn't make sense. And I have mentioned this, I have theorized this in the past. One of my many thousand theories is that this whole mess is kind of giving government operation vibes. And as a veteran, and I know a lot of you guys are also prior military or triple letter agencies, whatever, is this not giving government operation vibes, right? I'm not talking about psyops. I'm talking about government ops, right? Which reminds me, this still could all be tied to the largest rug bust in history, right? We know the Aryans and Jesse James Bailey were arrested back in 2023. It was a massive Fed arrest, right? Which also reminds me that a retired FBI agent in the early days had mentioned that Steve Goncalves is not who we think he is, right? What did he mean by this? Is it possible that this retired FBI agent that said this about Steve possibly recognized that Steve is also working either directly or indirectly for the feds? Is that a possibility? And then I also would love to be able to question law enforcement, because we have a case here where law enforcement didn't even interview the neighbors properly, right? We've all heard, and I have mentioned, Enan Harsh was asked like 2 basic ass questions, right? And it wasn't until he went and did a live on a YouTube channel that then he was asked to go back to court regarding the IDAHO4 case because of the information that Enan Harsh released in that live. It's like, wait a minute, you're calling Enan Harsh back to court to ask him, or back to the station to ask him all these questions like years after. That's how big of a failure this investigation was. And also, why did they fail to retrieve so much footage? And what did they retrieve anyway? Because whatever they did retrieve, the little bit of information that we know of, it was not retrieved in a timely manner, right? It's just giving government operation vibes. And what I mean by that is the whole drug bust involving the Aryan Brotherhood gang, Jesse James Bailey. To this day, and I know people have said Emma Bailey is not related, but I have a feeling that Emma Bailey is related to Jesse James Bailey. I haven't been able to verify that though. And we know Emma Bailey is also involved in that very underground illicit substance world, right? What about the unmatched DNA under Maddie's nails? What about the unmatched blood DNA on the handrail? For God's sakes, it was blood, right? What about the 2 sources of unknown male DNA? Right? And although I don't always agree with every family member, like the Goncalves family, I don't always agree with them, but at the end of the day, I still believe that the families deserve the whole truth, right? There is more than one person involved here, for sure. Right? Let's not forget that Mr. Kohberger is accused of taking 4 people out in 8 minutes. Well, that was the original timestamp. They said he took 4 people out in 8 minutes, right? But what did we hear in the last hearing? That he did it in 4 minutes. That he unalived 4 people in 4 minutes. And this is without previous criminal charges. This is without unaliving anybody. This is without having history of violence. We're supposed to believe that he took 4 people out in 4 minutes, utilizing at least 2 different weapons. Okay, this was per Bill Thompson. And then he supposedly still had time to sit on a stool to beat the crap out of Kaylee and beat her face to a pulp, making her face unrecognizable. And then unaliving Ethan, and then having time to cut his legs, and then fighting and struggling to unalive Xana, who had nearly severed fingers. And then he still had time, remember this is within 4 minutes, to pass right by Dylan and leave her just perfectly intact, and then head out the sliding back door covered in red fluid and carrying at least 2 dirty weapons, right? So we're supposed to believe that he did all of this in under 4 minutes, and then perfectly, magically drives away in a white car without trace of any DNA, without signs of chemicals being used for cleanup. No DNA at his apartment, no DNA at his work office, no DNA at his parents' home. Yeah. No, it doesn't sit well with me, right? Oh yeah, and carrying a vacuum, right? Because per Dylan, she saw something that looked like a vacuum. I'm not saying Dylan is lying, but again, wasn't she under the influence? Yes, she was. She was under the influence. Or did she see somebody cleaning up? Was the crime much sooner than we've been led to believe? We've all heard the parents of the victim say that 3:30 was a dark hour, right? You guys think that that is possible? Please, if you're a guilter, let me know. How do you think that it's possible that he did all of this? All of this in under 4 minutes. Sat by a stool, beat people up, cutting things, cutting body parts, cutting legs. In 4 minutes. Still had time to clean up, still had time to leave in a car. Come on. Like, I really want to understand your perspective. And I also wanted to give you guys a little psychological tip here, right? This is something that we learned when I was getting my master's in psychology. I paid, what, over $100,000 to get my master's 4.0. So you don't have to, babe. And when dealing with people who are intelligent versus not intelligent, quick takeaway. If you meet a person and they very quickly jump to conclusions, Doesn't matter what it is. Like, they just very quickly jump to conclusions. Instead of asking questions, you know you are dealing with somebody of less intelligence. People who are highly intelligent are, okay, they question everything. They don't jump to conclusions. They jump to questions. When you meet a person who has a very solidified worldview and they just assume, you're dealing very likely with a person who has a lower IQ. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it gives you a viewpoint of who you are talking to. And when you are dealing with people who are assuming, jumping to conclusions, not asking questions or asking minimal questions, there's almost no point in trying to have a conversation with them, because again, their brain works a little bit slower or differently, right? And that's okay. We love everybody here. Some other questions, right? We also know that Kaylee and Maddie had attempted to call Jack Showalter several times. Was it a total of 7 or 9 times? I can't recall. That's a lot of calls back to back, right? And if he's not answering, why wouldn't you just walk right over there, right? Why wouldn't Kaylee and Maddie just walk right on over there if he's supposedly living less than a block away from you? And if they're fighting, because we've heard Steve G say a lot of things. Oh, it's just things between lovers. It's just things between lovers. Well, if it's something between lovers, why wouldn't you just go walk on over there like a couple, less than a block away and try to talk to Jack? There's a reason for that. And in my opinion, it's either the girls were making those calls and they were distressed, meaning they could not walk over there because at that time they could have already been attacked, or somebody made those calls as a setup, right? I also want to know, where is the interrogation footage of Mr. Brian Kohberger? Where is the interrogation footage? Because we have heard that he was interrogated. But again, every time that we are asking for footage, it just magically disappears, poof, into thin air, right? We don't have it. It doesn't exist. We have nothing to do with that, says Bill Thompson. You have to talk to the feds. We are not involved there. And we know that Steve Goncalves had mentioned that there was another camera that had never been released. He was referring to more footage that was going to be used in court. Okay, how about they show it to the world and we can tell you what we think? Again, if you supposedly have all this footage that you're going to show us in trial, I mean, if BK did it, why not allow us to see it with our own eyes? Just let us see the footage, right? Again, we're not here to side with anybody. We are here to make sure that our constitutional rights are not stomped all over, which of course, yeah, they're being stomped on, by the way, if you haven't paid attention to what's going on in the world. Department of Justice, Attorney General, Epstein stuff. It's, yeah, our rights are getting stomped all over, right? And of course, Steve is pissed that there's no trial. And I get it. I would also want to be pissed, or I would also be pissed if there was no trial, because at the end of the day, they lost a daughter. And deep down, I think that their gut instinct is telling them that Mr. Brian Kohberger might not be the one. In the early days, we heard the G-Fam mention that when they saw Brian, they're like, nah, he couldn't have, right? Is that instinct there for a reason? We also heard rumors of Steve G assuming, believing, theorizing that maybe the ex-boyfriend had something to do with this. Are his dad instincts right still? Right? I mean, how are we supposed to believe that Kohberger did it? Like, if the speeches they're saying in this last hearing, okay, they know that those are lies, right? How are we supposed to believe that Brian Kohberger did it? How are we supposed to believe anything that is coming from the side of the state, from the prosecution? If you're still, to this day, lying to our effing faces like we're all a bunch of low IQ individuals, right? Why are you still lying to us in these stupid speeches saying that Dylan and Bethany were asleep? Everybody, even the guilters know, okay? We've all read the legal documents. These women were not asleep, right? They were not asleep. They were on social media. They were creating files. They were deleting files. Now, I have no idea if Brian Kohberger did this or not, but there is the possibility that he could have taken the plea out of fear of the death penalty. That's really common. I don't understand how some people can't grasp that. It's really weird to me. Like, hello, it's one or the other, right? And going back to the beginning of time, it also makes me wonder why they never bothered to look into the white Elantra that was abandoned in Oregon. You guys remember that white Elantra? Magically abandoned in Eugene, Oregon, found just days after the IDAHO4. And when they traced the vehicle, it belonged to somebody out of Moscow. Right? I have not forgotten about that vehicle, but for some reason, whenever I talk about that vehicle, whenever I talk about the homeowners of 1122 King Road, the previous homeowners, and their issues with the law, you guys know who I'm talking about, right? The two guys, we can't even say their name because, like, they don't even give me a warning here. They just remove things now if I talk about those guys. It's crazy. That's the reason that my Patreon was also removed. Like, and I know one of them is a very powerful man, right? So I just wanted to share these questions with you because we know that none of this makes sense. Is it possible that it was a government operation gone wrong? Again, the arrests that happened back in 2023 regarding Jesse James Bailey, which some people have said is an uncle or the father of Emma Bailey. This is literally the drug lord of Idaho. Like, he runs shit, right? He runs everything. I'm not able to verify if they're related and how they're related, but it was the largest drug bust in history, okay? Who's in the chat, by the way? Hello, Skolma. Hi, DM. DM. Misinformation and no bruises on his hands. DM says, not to mention the DNA of BK on the sheath. Yeah, let's talk about that because that was found on the second pass. How do you miss the sheath, okay? I've shown you guys my very own K-bar, my very own sheath from when I was in the military, and it's not small. Like, how did you not find the sheath immediately? Even if it had been slightly under Maddie, I think it's weird and very convenient that they found it till the second time that they went through the house. That's really odd. And let's be real, there have been so many cases where evidence has been planted. And when we are looking at Moscow's track record, it's not a good track record. So you always have to be open to the idea of something being planted, especially when nothing else makes sense, especially when touch DNA is not allowed in military courts, because that's what they found on that sheath. Touch DNA is not allowed in military courts for a reason. Because why? Because it's extremely flawed, and most countries don't allow it in criminal cases either, right? So, misinformation says, and no bruises on his hands, right? Allegedly, Mr. Kohberger also had a physical exam. Like a day or two after the crime was committed, he didn't have any injuries, no bruises. So we're supposed to believe he took 4 people out, mashed their heads in, did whatever, cut them up, sat on the stool and watched, took out 2 weapons, because that's what Bill Thompson said, right? He said, he mentioned, or he hinted at there being 2 weapons. He did all that in 4 minutes. And no injuries, and this is his first time. And people were saying, well, Brian Kohberger, you know, he had some ties to some people back in PA and disappearing women. Yeah, this is when they were grasping at straws, when the state was grasping at straws and they didn't have anything to really point towards Brian Kohberger. And then when they did further investigation, they had to come forward and say, yeah, actually, Mr. Kohberger has nothing to do with those disappearing women. Sorry, we messed up, right? And Tiffany says, and with carrying a vacuum, right? Because allegedly Dylan saw a vacuum. Have you looked into Brent Mortensen? Patty, yes. Please go watch my very old videos 2.5 years ago. I made a lot of videos about him, right? Hello, Momo's thinking. Hi, my pal Sal Vintage. Oh, yes, Jazz. Just wait, because I have a video coming up regarding the fireman, right? A lot of people are saying that he looks an awful lot like Brian Kohberger. Misinformation says, I mean, Brian was in forensics. If he had drug connections, maybe one called him for his help to clean because he knows about that. Maybe. That's also a possibility. But if he was just there to clean, why would he have a sheath? This is definitely not enough time for one person, Anna. You're right. BK is innocent. Nigel says fireman was Kohberger's witness. Did they have him deleted? We're going to talk about that, right? Suntoast Flow says, Delta Force 1 and Navy SEAL should learn from BK. That's funny. BK is apparently John Wick. Exactly. And people talking about Occam's razor is like, people that throw out Occam's razor never utilize Occam's razor themselves, right? They're always like, well, like the thing that would make the most sense. It's like, well, none of this actually makes sense. The only thing we have here pointing to Brian Kohberger is the DNA on the sheath. Again, this is useless in most courts in the world and in military courts, right? Because it's so flawed. Occam's razor would actually point to, and statistics would actually point to the ex-boyfriend and or the roommates, because they were closest in proximity and they were awake the entire time and they were on their phones. And now we know that they were FaceTiming their family members as well. And we also know that they were creating files, altering files, deleting files. So Occam's razor would point us to that, right? Most of the evidence points to not Brian Kohberger. And Sherry and Barney at home says, so many sketchy decisions in this case. Tearing down the house was wrong. That was a big red flag to me. And when they tore the house down, a lot of people were saying, it doesn't matter if they tear the house down because this isn't going to make it to trial anyway. And look, they were right. Ooh, Lori says, kind of like the Epstein files. Yeah. Now they're gaslighting us, right? And saying that didn't exist. It was just a list of other criminals. There was no Epstein list. Nothing to see here. Can you see? Says, Bill said the only footage they were going to use is the one with the car by the house. That's what he said, right? Patty says, ICE agent arrest without warrant. It is true, though, that SG is always trying to confuse, so everything that comes out of his mouth has to be taken with a grain of salt, so. BK also said he did it. No, he just said yes, right? But we also know that so many innocent people choose plea deals. It's actually quite common. And when you have, not that I am for or against Candace Owens, but when you have like political figures talking about this case and saying that something is really effing off, it's probably because something is really effing off, right? I mean, if even a politician can see that something is amiss here, Occam's razor, it's because something is amiss here. They never wanted this to go to trial, right? Misinformation says the social media activity means they lied about being asleep. Exactly. Why did they lie about that? Occam's razor. Why would they lie about that? Unless they know something or they are either directly involved, right? Nigel says, and his knuckles were fine in his selfie day after as well. Exactly. No injuries, no nothing, right? Yeah, he had a physical, like, was it like the very next day or like 2 days after or something? No injuries, nothing. He would absolutely be bruised. He would absolutely have some injuries, especially because we know that the fight, well, there was struggle. There was struggle. Xana fought, right? Xana fought. I will let you guys hang out in the chat. I have a meeting to go to in like 3 minutes, but thank you guys for joining me in today's live. Maybe I will get on later. I'm not sure yet if I have enough time, but I do appreciate you guys popping in the chat and sharing your point of views, right? Even though a lot of us disagree, this is a really weird case. I think that even if we disagree, some of us can still say, yeah, there is something amiss here. And why did the roommates lie about being asleep? Why would they lie about that? That is a truth, right? So I need a better Momo's thinking, thank you, Nika. Rights violated. That's enough for me. Exactly. And again, that's what we're here for. I've always said, look, even if Brian did this, you can't stomp all over his rights to get to him. You just can't do that. Because if that's the case, then we might as well be living in a communist country, right? Elizabeth Peters says, it cracks me up. 1 minute BK is accused of being a stealth ninja killer and the next a bumbling fool. And we do know that he has that diagnosis of like dexterity. So dexterity issues. He's like really bad at having coordination basically. He was a good runner. He was a good runner, but running doesn't really require dexterity, right? As a neurodivergent person myself, my dexterity is horrible. Like, I can sprint all day long. I can run all day long, but I can't do ninja moves. Okay, that involves way too much coordination, way too much dexterity. It's one thing to do this as fast as possible, and another one to have to multitask and chop people up, or ninja moves, or tennis, right? Like, I could never do tennis. So... oh, it's 12:30. I gotta go, guys. Leave a like if you are in here. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you are signed up to get notifications for these random lives that I'm gonna be sharing. And if you think that the Goncalves will return the money, people are already harassing them for the money. Leave a 1. If you think that they're just gonna say, fuck it, we're keeping it, we're not doing anything, you guys gave it to us and we're not returning it, leave it 2. Also, share in the comments, do you guys think that the G fam got work done? There's been rumors, there's been speculations. Who knows? You guys take care. Bye-bye.